In this special GitHub Late edition of the Toolbox, I'll talk about my favorite universe announcements, and then I'll share some exciting Tailwind CSS 3 alpha features, plus one more tip in searching through your terminal history. It's Wednesday, October 27, and this is episode 10. So let's get started. Hey there, this is Ray Villalobos, and I stream about full stack development topics, usually Wednesdays at 1 p.m. But today was a special day. We had the great GitHub Universe conference that happens once a year that I usually go to in person. Last couple of years, it's been online, so that's actually worked out pretty well. I think it opens it up for everyone, and it's just a very fun conference for a company that I really love and appreciate. They have been on fire recently, releasing all types of things. So if you didn't get to go to it today, you can go to githubuniverse.com and take a look at all the videos. The keynote is pretty good. They do a great job with producing it, and you can go to the on-demand sessions and take a look at this view full schedule. If you want to learn more about the specific things that I learned, I felt like this year there wasn't so much like any huge announcements. They've been making announcements left and right. Just last week, we got a new version of practice environments that was called vscode.dev. We have had announcements on all types of things, CodeSpaces, Copilot, all kinds of stuff. And I feel like they're just releasing them as they come out. They were not waiting for any sort of special event. So I think actually just a couple of days ago, we got vscode.dev. So that was cool. I'm also, I think that, I don't know, maybe doing these a little bit later will open it up so that more people can come to these Toolbox episodes. So I don't know, let me know in the comments if you like this time. And it's pretty cool. Looks like I have a fellow compatriot from Panama. Hello, Javier, ¿cómo estás? Yeah, late night is the best time. I usually plan these episodes based on when my kids aren't around. They usually have like a homeschooling thing that they go to. So, but they're upstairs. I just told them to be quiet. We'll see. Sometimes my dog barges in, so don't worry about it. It's Mojo, the coding dog, if you've seen him. So I imagine everybody can actually hear me. Oh, the late night show. Yes, not working. Yeah, not during work time. I don't know if you guys like it better. This might be a better time. My kids also go to some things at night, so I can scope out an hour. So as I was talking about what happened in GitHub Universe, I really felt like there wasn't a ton of new things, that it was mostly just kind of previous announcements highlighted. So I'm going to go through some of the things that I really enjoyed in the new announcements, so that you can learn kind of what I thought was the coolest part of the conference. Now, number one, we had this kind of small feature in CodeSpaces. So if you've been using CodeSpaces, you know that they're super convenient. They allow you to essentially work in the cloud. I think it was partially open to everyone. They did release it for enterprise accounts, for corporate and enterprise accounts. And they said that they were going to be releasing it or having some sort of public release from everyone. I was actually expecting it to be in the Universe conference, like a big announcement of what that was going to be, but it just seems to be taking a little bit longer. But one thing they really did talk about was being able to configure these code spaces for your projects. So I have a link right here, and I wrote an article, so you can go to rabo.org pretty soon after this is over and check out you know, all the links to everything that I'm talking about. So if you go to, let's see. So essentially what you can do is you can create an additional file called DevContainer.json. It goes into a .devcontainer folder. And in that file, you can pre-configure your CodeSpaces environment. And if you're using github.dev, or if you go to any repo, you can hit period and it'll launch a project. And you can go in there and edit things. So you can actually use it for predefining what somebody's going to see when they open up that environment. That should also work in vscode.dev. What happens in there is you can define things like a specific Docker build that you want to get to. So you can specify something like a Docker, hold on, that doesn't look right. Yeah, a Docker build that you want to approach, or you can install plugins, you can install themes, you can do all kinds of stuff. So I'll show you an example. There's actually like a little building feature that lets you select features to install. And you can then pre-build your code spaces using that. So that was kind of announced, this configure your project feature, which I thought was pretty cool. Let's see, I have some projects that I've been using this. And so this CodeSwing.json file has that dev container document. And what it lets me do is it lets me preload a specific extension. And you can also do any command. So if you want to do, when somebody runs the code space, if you want to npm install to install all the modules, you can go ahead and do that. Just by typing some additional things in here or using that interface. You can also do an npm start, or even run some testing, some testing code. Anything that you would create an npm script for, you can do directly in this file. And when somebody opens up your, your code space or your, your github.dev or vscode.dev, then they will be able to start with all those presets. So you can preload color things or any plugins, if that way you can make sure that people have the plugin that they need in order to work with your project. I know that when I'm working, I have to do a lot of stuff in between different platforms. So sometimes I'll be working in React, sometimes I'll be working in Vue, sometimes I'll be working in 11t, and all those need different plugins pre-installed. So I can have all these different environments for that. So that was the sort of very first cool announcement, and you can see that you can see the demo in the website. They have some demos of how to do this. So super easy. You can run any other commands, so npm install, npm start, or npm tests, whatever you want. The other, I think the biggest announcement today was something called GitHub issues. So somewhere in here, I have GitHub issues. So before this, GitHub issues was something that was invite only. And I had it actually for like a week, and I didn't get a chance to really fully go in there, but I'm pretty aware of what it is. So it's essentially project planning for developers. And essentially it gives you the ability to do tables in your project planning. So if you've ever done projects in GitHub, you get like a Kanban style board, which is something that developers are really used to. but it doesn't allow you to do things like create reports, specialize versions, sort pretty easily. And they are now giving you that capability, so you can create different looks for the the projects. You can organize them by essentially table. You can add things like the team, the assignees, and all that other stuff right in here. Super cool. So you can switch also to the traditional sort of board view if you want to, or you can go to this table view. Pretty awesome. This is pretty cool. I like that they just added this feature where you can, when you have to-do lists, you can easily also convert them into issues. So if you have little to-do lists in your topics, then you can just click on a button and it'll convert them into issues, which is pretty cool. So a lot of this is probably what I would say, and I was expecting, I don't know, they've been announcing so many things. I thought maybe there was something hidden, but this is probably the biggest feature. But to get to this, I found that when I tried to go to a repository and start a project in a specific repository, that this wasn't working. But if you just go to the home page, you have to go to your profile or somewhere in your projects, then you can actually hit this projects thing, and then you'll be able to see this projects beta sort of section right here, and then you can start a new project with this, either the traditional new project or this new project beta. And it's pretty self-explanatory. So you can type in an issue here, add an issue from a repository. I don't know that I have that many repositories. Yeah, it looks like there's a few pull requests in here. And you can just keep on adding directly from this, and then make assignees or change the status. And then you get this table view. This is a different way of looking at things. I need to really spend a lot more time with it. But that was, I think, probably the biggest feature that was announced at the conference. And I think that a couple of years ago when I went to GitHub Universe, I noticed that if you went to the vendor section, the vendor part of GitHub Universe, you would see a lot of vendors that had built other products. And this is one of the things that I saw a lot, like project management really seemed to be an issue for people. So they just got right on it and they started developing it. So it looks really good. And they even showed some future advanced features. So actually I have like my notes here. So this is the article that I'm writing for the blog. And I wanted to show you that they gave us a couple of sneak peeks of things that they're doing. So they're actually gonna build a timeline feature. So this is pretty cool. You'll be able to see, once you fill it all out, you'll be able to see the project in a timeline view, which I think is pretty amazing. And a lot of project managers like this kind of thing as well. And then you will also be able to get these cool insights where you get to see a graph of your project activity over time. This is not something that you can see today, but I'm sure it's going to come fairly soon because it looks really well done. It looks like they're probably just bug fixing a couple of things so far. So cool. Let me see if there are any questions. Nothing really, just perfect sound for me. Am I getting like a lot of Spanish people? That's great. So yeah, everybody seems to like the sort of late night. I could literally do this thing at like 4 a.m. because I usually go to sleep pretty late. So I could literally just like launch this thing at 4 a.m. if it was better. Then it would be really quiet, but I don't know. I'd have to really hit some matcha tea or some coffee. The other, and I thought this was like one of the smallest announcements, but that I felt was one of the coolest. So if I go, let's go to my profile again. They added a command palette directly onto GitHub. So now from any page, you can just hit Command K and you can just start typing in something like this, and you'll get a list of the repos, and you can navigate this just with the keyboard and get to wherever you want. So Command K takes you to this view, lets you go directly into either repositories, projects, packages, or take a look at some of your favorite repositories right from there. So I thought that was really simple and very well done. And I almost missed it because it was like a very quick, hey, by the way, we threw this feature up. Just Command K from anywhere. Another super tiny feature that I really, really loved was the fact that you can go to any repository now. And let's open this one up right here. So I've got, let's say I wanted to copy this index.html file. Now before, what I used to do to copy the HTML, just sometimes this was long and it was hard to grab. Like sometimes you went like this and you didn't want to grab the whole thing. So there was this raw button right here and you could select all and copy. Well, that was a little bit of a pain. So now there's actually a button right here on top of every one of the code pieces, and you could just hit copy raw contents. Same thing as hitting the raw button, select all, and copy. So anyways, so yes, this I really love. Simple little tiny addition, but you can tell that the people at GitHub are actually using GitHub because they build these things that is sort of the stuff that I would do. And so many times I see like the sort of productivity killer is when people who don't use something start developing features for that, and then you see really poor decisions being made based on the fact that they're just never in the product. So the fact that you have developers building this development tool is very fantastic. Let's see. It could be really, yeah. I hope somebody is writing to me in what I think is French. So, at least they translated. That could be really fortunate because, yeah, I think that the projects feature is really amazing, and it's going to be very deep, and it's going to kind of change the way that people work. It's such a big part, like a Kanban board, such a big part of how everybody does things. But I think that it was just very super geeky and not particularly useful. So it's good to see that they have added a ton of resources just specifically to that feature. So that was sort of what I got from GitHub Universe. I need to dig through the different sessions, but the things that I liked were just really those three things so far. There's been so much other stuff being released recently that I don't think they just had anything sort of new to announce, and nothing like Copilot or anything else like that. Now, I did see something today that was pretty amazing, and that is the Tailwind CSS 3.0 alpha release. So, man, these people are I don't know if you've used Tailwind CSS, but it's this CSS framework. Think of like Bootstrap, but differently. It doesn't have any like interactive components, so you don't get like a slideshow or modals or anything like that. But what it does is just allows you to put in your, lets you use classes in order to build your styles. Now they're just releasing a version 3 alpha, and they have this new way of doing things that is called the JIT compiler. JIT compiler essentially, before, the way that Tailwind works is it has like 100 times more classes than Bootstrap. So there's a lot, there's like, I don't know, 12, 15 colors. And then there's different grayscale versions. So you have like, yellow 100, 200, 300, 400, all the way to like 900. So it has an immense amount of classes. So the way that you used to be able to work with that, because if you include all those classes in a single CSS file, then you would get this gargantuan CSS document with all kinds of stuff that you weren't using. So they ended up building this thing called the JIT compiler. And then what that allows you to do is it lets you look through a folder of files, analyzes which classes you're using, and it writes a version of the CSS that works only for those classes that are in your document. And a few days ago, I released a new version of my Tailwind CSS course. And you know what? If you follow me on LinkedIn, I'll make it free after this class. Like, even if you don't have an account, you'll be able to watch it for free. But I just added the JIT compiler part of Tailwind CSS. Super cool. Makes it it builds files that are really, really tiny, like 20K or less, because it's only writing the styles that it needs for the pages that it's building. So super cool. Well, today, actually, I don't know, very recently, they announced that they're moving towards that model, but then they also added a CDN. So before, if you wanted to try things out, you would have to download, you have to install a project and all that stuff to try out the JIT compiler. You really couldn't do that without building something complicated. So I have a sample here of it working. So let's see. Yeah, so this is how you work with the CDN version of the JIT compiler. So essentially, if you want to add this, if you're trying to do a demo, you don't want to do this in production because the file is still bigger than it should be. But all you need to do to use this is just add a script tag into this CDN, which is like cdn-tailwindCSS.vericel.app. So this is actually an app that will run, and that script tag is going to look at the current document that is being called, look at the styles, and then send a version of the CSS file that only uses those styles. Again, doing the same thing that the NPM module is doing, but allowing you to do that in a CDN, for like a demo or something like this. So you can go to this Tailswing. So let's see. You can go in here to this URL and take a look. So it's github.dev/planet of the web, and then it's called Tailswing-CDN. You can go in there and you can fork it, and it just has all the stuff already built in. What the JIT compiler allows you to do is do things like, for example, create a size of text like this. It has, so Tailwind CSS has all these like size classes, but sometimes you want a size that they don't provide for you. So with the JIT compiler, you can create a custom size by just putting it in brackets like this, right? And then you can make any size you want. You can change it to like 800 pixels, which would be crazy because that's way too big, but maybe like 100 pixels. And what it's doing as I'm typing this in is the JavaScript application analyzing my code, notice what I'm typing, and creating custom styles, and then displaying them in the browser. Not something you want to do for production. You still want to use the module version of the JIT compiler, but this is fantastic for demos because there are some things that I just couldn't show you in a CodePen or in a CodeSwing before this. And so all you do is you add this script tag. Notice that this one has an additional question mark and plugins attribute here, which means that you can also have it install a plugin. And I'm installing here the typography plugin, which gives you an additional class that you can add called pros. And have you ever created? I'm going to undo that. Have you ever created line widths that are way too huge, right? Like this paragraph shouldn't be this wide, right? It doesn't look great. So this typography class allows you to, it optimizes the display of that paragraph based on the amount of text that is in that paragraph and the environment that it's sitting in. So it does all that automatically. It also colored this URL automatically, and it does a few other nice things with the rest of the typography. So you can read about that plugin on the web. So you can install a version of the CDN that has all the different plugins. So there's like a form plugin or a forms plugin for Tailwind that makes it easier for you to build your forms with validation. So yeah, that is pretty cool. You can also, so notice that normally to build things in Tailwind CSS, you end up doing something like this. You add a bunch of classes. So if I take these out, you'll be able to see that it's just sort of kind of normal styles, but you can add things like how much margin you want at the top. So this thing is MT4, so you can add more or less margin at the top. We'll do 0. And then you can say some padding. Then you can specify a text size. Remember that I said that you can also specify the text size like this. And then you can do like a color here. So type in blue here, and it'll color it blue. Normally, this is how you do styles. However, when you are creating, say, a page that has a bunch of the same styles, this is kind of a pain. So one thing that you can do is use this apply method to create a version of that style. So we created this special class called big, and then we essentially grabbed all the stuff that we typed in here and we pasted it in there. We're applying it to this headline. That's why this headline is that weird color. And then we just apply them right to the current tag. And the way that it's accomplishing this, because normally you wouldn't be able to do this in just like a CodePen or something that didn't have that JIT compiler in it. So what it's doing here is I'm creating a style. Notice that I'm creating a style sort of section, an inline style with a very different class. Normally the type here would be text/CSS, but here I'm adding a text/TailwindCSS. And that is giving me the ability to use this apply method right in my demo, which is pretty cool. Now, normally on a demo, you would have like a CSS tab right here, right? And you would put that in the CSS tab. This doesn't work right now because it does need that special type. So if you're using something like CodePen, you can't just add this apply method in the CSS file. You have to use this Tailwind CSS. I don't know, maybe there's another way of doing it. So that allows you to create sort of macros essentially for the CSS that you would be writing. Now notice also that I can customize. Normally in normal Tailwind, I create like a config file, and it's a separate file in your package.json, not in your package.json, just on your regular project. Now here you could do the same thing, modify your config file in the JavaScript document. And what I've done here is I created a custom color called salmon that doesn't normally exist in Tailwind. And I just gave it a color here, and you can extend in any number of ways here. And once you have that, then you can use that color. So notice that I'm using this text salmon class that normally doesn't exist in Tailwind CSS. So a lot of really cool features with this new alpha version. I am really looking forward to it. They're really impressive with how quick they release things. I mean, they just released like a 3.2. They went from like 3.0 to 3.1, like I think 3.0 at the beginning of the year, and 3.1, 3.2, which was a pretty big update. And they're already on CSS 3.0 alpha. So they have a few additional utilities and variants that they have added. So it looks like I'm going to be getting to work on things. It actually doesn't seem like a huge upgrade. I mean, it's a huge upgrade from version 3.0, because I think at version 3.1 or 3.2, they moved to that new JIT compiler. But it's not, if you've been keeping up and you've been using version, 2. Whatever 3, whatever the latest one is, you will have learned how to do use the JIT compiler, which again in my course does show you how to do that. So yeah, this is really cool. So essentially some new additions and not that many. They really tried to not break older things. So and also, so for example, there's no longer, it doesn't need, because of the JIT compiler, it doesn't need CSS purge any longer. So there's a plugin called purge that essentially looks at all your code, and it then creates a version of the code of the CSS that uses only the classes that you're using in your code. Well, because of the way that the JIT compiler works, it doesn't need to do that anymore. So they modified one of the names of the items that used to refer to purge CSS. It doesn't need it anymore. So the config's going to be a little bit different if you're upgrading. But not much else. A few color name changes. I don't even know what that is. Let's see. Overflow clip now. It's now called text clip. Okay, whatever. No longer supports post CSS 7. Older version. We're now on post CSS 8. So, and no big deal. So Tailwind is essentially a post CSS plugin itself. And so it's doing things on top of post CSS. So that's great. But the big thing is this just-in-time compiler. All you do is add the script tag, and then do keep in mind though that they said that that script tag is probably going to change in the final version. So use it at your own risk. If it changes though, it's just like a simple change it to a different URL. But that's what they have for now. I probably will. Maybe I would want to see like a versioning thing in there, so that I think you can do a version, but it's probably going to change. So don't think it's going to last forever. Definitely not something you want to use in production. And here it shows you like how to load in plugins, how to customize things, just like I showed you. I think if you want to just play around with it, just go to my demo and start messing around with the sample that I've given you. Also, this is it's called CodeSwing CDN. So github.com/planet of the web. So I'm sorry. github.com/planet of the web, and then Tailswing CDN, right? So All my stuff is at github.com planet of the web, and just remember Tailswing CDN, and you can get to it. Once you're here, then all you need to do is hit the command period, or just change this URL to .dev, and you'll jump into that environment. And if you want to play with it on your own project, you can go ahead and clone this repo. Actually, let me go ahead and switch it to a template so that anybody can use it. Let's see, is that on this thing? Oh, there it is, template repository. So you should be able to go to that repository now and just hit use this template. And it has a CodeSwing, so just use this template, hit period, and then you can just give it a name, and you can use it on your own project. And I like that kind of stuff because then you have a little great starting point for if you're doing a demo somewhere and you want to show how that works. So, okay, let's see. We've got a couple of questions here. Yeah, the CD, oops, I don't know what happened. Yeah, the CDN trial before committing to it. Yeah, also, it lets you play around without having to do like an npm install, like an npm init with the, with the package.json. Like it's the, if you just want to see if you would love it, you can jump straight into it, which is fantastic. I'm probably gonna definitely in the next version of my course, I'll probably just use that CDN. I'll still show you how to create a project if you need to, but I like giving you places where you can just immediately go play around with something. Is this an intro to Tailwind? Not really. I have a course, and if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'll create a link later on and make it free for my current course, which has the JIT compiler. It uses it's on version 2.3, whatever the latest version is, so you can play around with it. So it's not specifically Tailwind CSS, but I'll take Tailwind CSS questions if you want to know more about it. So great stuff. Now, what else did I have? And how are we doing on time? Let's see. Oh, it's 30 minutes. So I have plenty of time. Yeah, if you have any questions at all, let me know. So last week in the last episode, I did this thing where I was showing you how to do history on your terminal. So let's see. Let's try. So I'm gonna Hyper. If you have been a Hyper user, I just realized that they updated it so that it's now compatible with an M1 chip, which it hadn't been before. It's driving me crazy. I was having to use terminal. The one thing I love about Hyper is that the margins are customizable. When you're using the terminal app, it puts everything at the very top left of the screen. I hate that because when I'm doing a demo, sometimes, I don't know, it feels like when you roll over the screens, some players will have junk up there. So I like to kind of move the thing in from the margins and make my font really big. So last week I showed you that you could do this history command, right? And then it gives you a history of everything you've ever done in the terminal, right? And you can also get to a specific command here. But oftentimes what I want to do is I know that I did an npm command that I want to repeat. So I would like to just say npm and then go to a specific version of my npm command. Now I have something in here installed that lets me do that. But there's actually a command in Bash, I think it is, and C shell as well. That is a search. So you can type in npm here. And if you keep on hitting Command R, it's just going to walk you through the history, all the way up the history for anywhere that it has that command, and show you just the commands like that. So I really love this. And I think if you hit Command S, you will do a forward search. So you can toggle up and down your search. And it's a little bit hard to remember, so I'm going to have to try it a whole bunch and use that muscle memory to get it burned into my brain. But that's pretty useful because a lot of times I'm not really interested in the history. I'm just interested not in the entire history. I'm just interested in looking for a specific command. So Control R, actually, it's Control R, and then you type in the command or anything you remember. Let's see, clone. Yeah, so if I want to look through all my clones, then I can do that and then hit Control R. I didn't do that many of those, and then Control S to go forward. So cool. I love that tiny bit of productivity there. Let's see. I think I had something else. Also, okay, so this is pretty. I think I'm a little bit too nerdy because I get very excited about things that I find. So I found this Markdown module called Markdown-it. okay, you probably have used Markdown-it is, it's something that lets you convert Markdown files into HTML. The problem that I have with Markdown in general is that when it takes a Markdown file and it converts it into HTML, it doesn't allow me to add any classes to that HTML. So it'll just take a table and it'll build a beautiful table, but it'll be the default table. And if you use something like Bootstrap, you know that in order to make the table look nice, you have to add a table class. Well, there is a separate but related Markdown-it attributes, ATTRS plugin that does just that. What it lets you do is add in curly braces like this, just a class that you want to add to a specific tag, and then it'll write out, when it writes the HTML out, it'll actually add that class. And it doesn't just work with classes. Notice that you can also do attributes like this, right? So, you can even do them inline. So in the middle of your Markdown, you can just write this. This is super useful. Look, even fenced-in code blocks, it'll do. The tables are a little weird. I don't know if it's here, but it does have a lot of examples down there, but I'll show you the thing that I was using it for. So I was using this for, I think, let's see. I think this is the one. Yeah. So I was using it to build this version of my table from a course that I'm working on publishing in GitHub. If you look at what I'm doing here, is I have an 11T site, right, with my, YAML sort of front matter. And all I have to do to add that class to the table is add this special table class here. So just by doing that, let's see, that looks better. By adding that class, then it adds the class to the written HTML. So if I take this out, hopefully it's recompiling. You can see that, by default, Bootstrap gives you a decent looking table. But if you want to get all the goodies, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and add the table class. And then it just looks way better, fantastic, and it's responsive. And there's all kinds of other classes that you can use. So, sometimes when I'm working super late at night, when I finally get to sleep, actually when I wake up in the morning, I tell my wife, like, oh, this is like all the stuff that I learned how to do while I was staying up super late. And this is one of those that, it's super late in the morning. So I don't even want to say, like, honestly, I think it was I was up till like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I found this thing and then I'm like, oh, I got to install this. I got to try it. It was so cool that I stayed up for like another couple of hours. So that is pretty awesome. So let's see, a couple of more questions. And I do believe that is everything that I got. So yeah, I think that's all of the tips that I have today. So just for the rest of the time, well, I'll probably end a little early. So let's see, is that a plugin for the shell? No, I think it just comes in with the bash shell. So if you use bash or Z shell, I'm on a Mac, then it just does that. I mean, I don't know if you have to, like, I don't think that you have to have it installed, but try it on your computer and see if it works. Control R, see if it works. And if not, there's probably some sort of way to install it. I showed you in the previous episode, so you may want to check it out, that I really love this thing called Oh My Seashell. I don't know how you pronounce it, but that adds like a ton of other really cool stuff to your shell. So the one thing that it adds that I really love, and actually you have to, it's kind of like a module / plugin, so there's a little bit of installation. But the one thing that it does, autocomplete. So I don't know if you saw that from when I was using the terminal. So I'll go back into Hyper. So not clear. So if I do like anything, notice that it's finished. Like it does a search of that history, and it's actually telling me what the recommended commands. So like git commits. Like see, these are previous commands that I have done. So this autocomplete has really changed my workflow again, and that's Oh My Seashell. So check that out if you're into productivity. I don't know. I'm like a terminal nerd, so I'm using, yeah, let's see. Let's keep on going through the different questions. This is great. This is my favorite time. So yeah, it's not really a plugin. I mean, the Oh My C shell is, but I think the history is just a command that exists in some shells. So let's see. Sometimes I'm hitting the wrong thing. Yeah, way better than there's like a cartoon, like a meme that has like a guy just hitting like up arrow a bunch of times just to find like an ls command. I am that guy. Like I've totally looked for simple commands that took me longer to hit that up arrow like 500 times than it did to just type this thing in. But I'm like, I refuse. I know it. I know I just did it. And I just keep on hitting that up arrow and sometimes driving myself nuts. So, oh, that's cool. This is a new view that puts you kind of on the corner. Oh, I like it. Wish you could make it bigger. But anyways, yeah, so way better than doing that. So a couple of things. The history command I think is pretty cool. If you want to really scroll through and see things that you have done that you don't remember, maybe were there. But most of the time I'm just trying to find a version of something that I have done. So what am I using instead of terminal? I'm using a terminal called Hyper. It's just like a super configurable terminal. So when you go to preferences, it'll open up in your current editor, I believe. I don't know why it's not. Doesn't look like it's, maybe it's just taking a while to open. But you can really add CSS. Like, so for example, these margins are CSS margins. So you just go in there and you type in whatever margins you want. It's better than just a terminal, in my opinion, because of that feature. But it has a lot of other customizations. There's actually a new terminal that is under development. I think it's called Warp. Let's see if I can find it. Is it Warp? Warp. Yeah, so like if you go to my website, which is rabo.org, you can just do a search for Warp, or you can, so it's like what I call the terminal of the future. So it's warp.dev. This looks super amazing and super promising because it's giving you like an area for you to type in the commands and take a look. It almost has like a lot of the sort of commands that I'm giving you. A lot of the features that I'm showing you, it has like a lot. Look at the multi-cursor, for example. So this is probably, I requested access. I haven't gotten it. I don't know when they're going to be done with it. But in the meantime, I think it's Hyper.js is the terminal that I love. Has a bunch of themes, has a bunch of plugins. I don't really use that many plugins, but I do like the ability of configuring everything by using just a file that lets you use CSS to like control the margins. That's really the margins that are the primary reason why I use it. Yes. So somebody already knows that I'm doing Hyper. Okay, hold on. This is really confusing. Sometimes I am hitting the wrong thing in here, so I apologize for that. It looks like I lost my StreamYard. So yeah, all my C shell, unbelievably cool. You should definitely check it out. But I am using Hyper with Oh My C shell installed as a plugin. So let's see. Yeah, I think it's like omyz.sh. So make sure you check that out. It's amazing. I'm never going back. So Tiana says, where is the StreamYard in here? Let's see. So somewhere I lost the StreamYard window. And oh, here we go. Here's StreamYard. Ooh, that's too much. So again, this has got to be my favorite quote of the day. I've been doing the up arrow for 2 years. Yes, I know what you mean, because that's totally me. I've been there. Like I've got to, I don't know what the record is, but 50 times at least. Sometimes it's like, oh, what did I do? Like, 3 days ago, I was using this command that I really need again. I think in that instance, I would probably use the history command because it really just lets you scroll super fast at all the previous commands, and then you hit the exclamation point, and it, like when you get the list, it has a number next to it. You hit the exclamation mark and then the number, and it'll retype that command. But if you're looking for a specific command and you remember part of it, then the search works really well because you could type in npm. So maybe I've saved you a bunch of time. Oh no, there's a Vim user here. Javier, you crazy person you. No, Vim, really good. I often can't get out of it. It's like :Q something. I can never remember. But that's hardcore. So I'm very impressed, Javier. I'm always super impressed with Vim people because they can do a ton of stuff with like their super keyword heavy. So great stuff. All righty. Yeah, that's all I have for you. The GitHub Universe conference continues. It's going to be on tomorrow. They have like a part 2. There's a lot of, previous recorded sessions already on the website. So check those out when you get a chance. And I'm going to go post my post on rabo.org so that you'll have it. And then I will make that course on Tailwinds free if you follow me on LinkedIn. So that's that. Thank you for coming. 45 minutes, so I'm like a little bit early. But thank you so much. And now I'm going to pull up my super loud end credits. Hopefully see you next week. Take care.